On YouTube, so I wanted to do my final top 25 before the end of the season. So, we'll obviously still have the Army-Navy game, but probably won't have too much of an effect on the top 25 unless the Navy somehow loses, which I don't see happening. So, go ahead and start with the 5 outside. At 5, I got BYU, 4 San Diego State, 3 Georgia, 2 USC, and then 1 Temple. So, like I said, this is the final one of the year, so I'm going to try to go into detail a little bit with each team, just kind of recap their regular season in a nutshell. So, go ahead and start with BYU. So, they actually did just lose Bronco Mendenhall as their head coach. He is, in fact, leaving for the University of Virginia, which I don't really get. I think BYU's a better job than UVA, but I guess BYU's kind of plateaued over the last 3-4 years. It kind of seemed like they've been an 8 or 9 win team every single year, finishing right outside the top 25 every year, getting inside the top 25 at some point. But yeah, so it was an up and down season for BYU. It seemed like just another season where they lost Taysom Hill, and still were able to recover okay. Had a couple rough games. Definitely an exciting season for them, no doubt. And I believe they play Utah in their bowl game, so it's a really exciting finish to the season for Utah, playing maybe their biggest rival in Utah. So, yeah, they do finish the season at 9-3 at the end of the regular season. I'm not going to do my predictions for the bowl game in this video. Obviously, I'm going to do that in a separate video. And, like I said, few rough games. The Mizzou game, they probably should have won. UCLA, the Michigan games were a little bit tough. But aside from that, it was a real solid season for BYU. Had a couple big wins, like I said. Hail Marys against Nebraska and Boise State. Beat a solid Utah State team. Had a stretch of good wins against AAC teams, including East Carolina, Cincinnati, and UConn, 2 of the 3 bowl teams. And, finished up the season with a win against a pretty solid Utah State team that was up and down this year as well. So, San Diego State just won the Mountain West yesterday, and I believe that leaves them finishing as a 10-win team during the regular season. Let me see if I'm right on that real quick. Alright, so yes, they did win 27-24 over Air Force, and it does make them Mountain West champions, which, like I said in my Mountain West prediction, a little bit of a surprise. I thought that, I think everyone thought at the year that Boise State was pretty much a lock to win the conference. It seems like that every year, though. They do head into a bowl game against Cincinnati, which they should be favored. I don't see why they wouldn't be. Some out-of-conference games that were a little bit rough for them. Lost to Cal by about 28, and then lost to Penn State. So 2 solid Power 5 teams, so you can really fault them there. But they did have some solid wins this year. Again, beating a pretty good Utah State team, beating Colorado State pretty handily, and of course defeating Air Force to win the Mountain West. So solid finish to the season for San Diego State, but I don't think that's near good enough to get them back in the top 25. I think they'll have to win a bowl game and have a few teams ahead of them lose. All right, so that brings me to Georgia, and I think I said this before, probably the worst Power 5 team that had 9 wins this year. Just looking at all their wins to finish up the year, most of them were close. Most of them were games that they should have won by a lot more, but they didn't. But like I said, had quarterback inconsistencies this year. Nick Chubb going down did not help them. So I don't remember who they are supposed to play in the bowl game, but it is another Power 5 team. I believe it's a Big Ten team. I want to say Penn State. So, it's Penn State. So, like I said, 9-win season for Georgia. If they win their bowl game, they should crack the top 25 as a 10-win Georgia team. Looks like they're going to have Kirby Smart come in as their new head coach for the following season. They do lose Mark Richt. He is headed to the U. I don't think he's not coaching for the bowl game, so we'll see what happens there. But should be a low-scoring bowl game. Never really tell Penn State. They've been a pretty solid team against bad teams, mediocre to bad teams, and then they have not done very well against great teams when you're talking about teams like Michigan State, Michigan, Ohio State. So, like I said, should be an interesting finish to the season for Georgia. See how hyped they are going into next year with a SEC East. It looks like it's going to be a lot better than it was this year. Hard to be worse though. All right, so move on to number 2, USC. So USC lost to Stanford, I believe. I want to say 43-22, somewhere in that ballpark. Kind of fits the up and down billing to the season that they've had. I don't think that keeping Clay Helton as the head coach is the right move for them. I will admit he did a very good job as interim head coach, but I think that USC should have looked in a different direction. At the same time, though, USC's always been a program that kind of thrived off of no names coming in. So Pete Carroll was a no name coming into the program. I'm not saying Clay Helton's a Pete Carroll, but you can never really tell with them. I just don't see. I keep on saying this every week. USC is really as talented as any team in the country, but a 5-loss USC team is not in the top 25. If they had won the Pac-12, sure. But like I said, they didn't. 41-22. So not a terrible game for Cody Kessler or really anyone on the USC team. Justin Davis had a solid game too. But like I said, nonetheless, they came up short against a pretty good Stanford team. All right, so Temple finishes as a 3-loss team, and I think they're as good as any 3-loss team not in the Power 5. You look at their 3 losses: Notre Dame, Houston, and then I want to say Navy. But Temple definitely defied expectations this year. They just played real solid defense, and I don't know. They played like the underdog the entire year, and it worked pretty well. So yes, they did lose to Notre Dame. South Florida was a team that they got railed by just because, I don't know, South Florida really heated up at the end of the year. And like I said, 10-win year for Temple. See if they can bring it to 11 in the bowl game. It should be a very intriguing bowl game against Toledo, two of the better non-Power 5 teams this year. So moving to the top 25. At 25, I've got Wisconsin. So they finished as a 9-win team this year. And, like I said, another team that had an up-and-down year. Really kind of finished where they were supposed to. I want to say they were around 21-22 at the beginning of the year in the preseason rankings, kind of where Wisconsin's been the last couple of years. Not a huge year for Joel Stave, but I really think it was his best year he's had in a little while. So, really during all of his career was a very inconsistent career for Joel Stave. And like I said, they finished pretty well. I would give them the nod as, I guess, the 3rd best team in the Big Ten West. They head into a bowl game against USC. Sorry, that's who USC's playing. Intriguing bowl game. 2 talented teams, very different teams though. One relying on speed, pretty balanced offense. The other one a very run-heavy offense. And see if Wisconsin can reach 10 wins and stay in the top 25. So go to number 24, Tennessee. So they finish right around where they were ranked in the preseason, which is a rarity for Tennessee. They do finish as an 8-win team, which is their best, I believe, since 2007. So they are showing improvement. Did finish actually as the 2nd best team in the SEC East. I do genuinely believe they had the ability to win the SEC East along with many other people, but they did not. And so like I said, pretty successful season for Tennessee nonetheless. They go into the Outback Bowl with Northwestern. So another entertaining bowl game. 2 teams that are pretty good defensively, and then 2 very different style teams on offense. So, like I said, should be an entertaining bowl game. See how Tennessee can finish. See if they can finish up this 9-win team. They did win their bowl game last year against Iowa, pretty big. So maybe we'll see if Tennessee can win big against Northwestern, and then see if Northwestern will come in next year as this year's Iowa. See if that's the key to being the Big Ten West team that surprises everyone, is losing to Tennessee in your bowl game. All right, so that's just a couple of theories that I've come up with in my head. All right, so move on to number 23, Western Kentucky. So Western Kentucky did just win, I want to say, the Conference USA. If I got that wrong, that's kind of sad. But like I said, Western Kentucky had a real solid season, led by one of the better quarterbacks that you probably never heard of, Brandon Doughty. He was very solid this year. And like I said, they did win quite a few big games. Beat Southern Miss, so yes, they did win the Conference USA. Southern Miss team that actually finished the year really well. Brandon Doughty did have over 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, and like I said, just one of the best quarterbacks outside of the Power 5 this year. Could be talked about as the best. Threw for 45 touchdowns and over 4,500 yards. So definitely has NFL size, and I think he will probably be going to the NFL next year. Should be interesting to see what happens there. But Western Kentucky, I believe they are heading. Yes, should be a very, very entertaining bowl game against South Florida. 2 teams that are extremely hot right now. 2 teams that are extremely good on offense, and but 2 very different teams on offense. So like I said, another entertaining bowl game. I really like the bowl lineup this season. It should be good. So move on to number 22, Utah. So they do play BYU in their bowl game, like I mentioned earlier. Finishes a 9-win team, and kind of a meltdown on the second half of the season. After the USC loss, everything kind of went downhill for Utah. Travis Wilson played out of his mind the first season, and then him and Devontae Booker had a pretty solid season all around. Had a little bit of injury trouble at the end, but Travis Wilson definitely did come back down to earth at the end. Still defied expectations for what you would expect out of Utah. They did finish with the best record in the Pac-12 South after USC lost, but they were not the best team in the Pac-12 South this year. I'd give them second or third best. So, like I said, nonetheless, very successful season for Utah. But we'll see what happens after this. Like I said, should be a pretty entertaining bowl game that they have against BYU. One of the rare rivalries you catch in a bowl game. All right, so move on to number 21, LSU. And, again, another team that started off very hot this year, was number 2 at one point, then lost to Bama. And it all kind of went spiraling downward from there. They did kind of save their season by winning against Texas A&M last week, or 2 weeks ago, whatever you want to say. And see what happens with Les Miles. Looks like for now he'll be sticking around for the bowl game. And obviously a huge season for Leonard Fournette. Didn't finish up great, but you only can do so much. Finished up with over 1,700 yards on the ground. I want to say around 20 touchdowns. But teams kind of started figuring him out at the end of the year. And they do play Texas Tech in their bowl game. So pure opposites when it comes to teams. One is both teams do have solid running backs. Should be a key matchup to see DeAndre Washington against Leonard Fournette. And then, but 2 very different teams from there. Different quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes, definitely one of the better quarterbacks in the country. Completely turned around that Texas Tech team this year. Team with I believe was a 4-win team last year. Now a 7-win team in a very improved Big 12. And then, should be interesting to see. If LSU can keep up points-wise with Texas Tech, but at the same time, Texas Tech's defense is probably worse than any defense LSU has seen this year. Texas Tech is a spitting image of what the nation thinks of the Big 12. So, we'll see what happens there. So, move on to number 20, Navy. And they are the last team on this list with a regular season game left, which is against Army this week. So they're a big rivalry game. Obviously, they're heavily favored, but solid season for Navy. Didn't finish as high as I predicted them to, but Navy was one of my dark horses at the beginning of the year. They had a very, very favorable schedule and a returning quarterback that is just a stud, great leader, great commander of the triple option, and led them to, I believe, a 9-win season, probably a 10-win season after the Army game. I'm not sure who they're gonna play in the Armed Forces Bowl yet, but see if I can figure that out real quick. Like I said, very good inaugural season for Navy in conference play. So see what happens next year after they lose Keenan Reynolds. Should be interesting. They do play Pitt in their bowl game, by the way. So good matchup with 2 Northeastern teams. All right, move on to number 19, Florida, and they do have a very intriguing bowl game against another traditional power in Michigan. So Florida did lose to Alabama yesterday. It's kind of highlighting their trend all year, playing pretty solid defense, and just nothing on offense. I'm not going to blame it on Treon Harris. It's just, he's not a terrible quarterback. It's just he can't get a rhythm. It's a lot like watching LSU with Brandon Harris. They need Will Grier back. I believe with Will Grier coming back next year with such a young team, Florida should be one of the best teams, if not in the SEC, then in the country. See if Will Greer can respond to obviously a rough season, getting suspended from steroids. But looks like Jim McElwain definitely has Florida trending in the right direction. Was a solid hire, one that I didn't know how it was going to turn out. But yeah, it should be interesting to see how they do next year. And like I said, definitely intriguing bowl game against Michigan. So, and that brings me to number 18, which is Michigan. And I do have them ranked lower than a lot of polls do. I don't really get why Michigan's ranked so high in a lot of them. The last game you saw, they just got beat terribly by Ohio State, and that brings them to a 3-loss team on the year. And I do believe Michigan's a solid team, but just did not finish up the season very well. They had a big win against Penn State, but so did all the other top teams. I do believe that they're third best team in the Big Ten East, but like I said, still got a little bit of work to do. Obviously, they're trending in the right direction under Jim Harbaugh, one of the better defenses in the country. And like I said, it should be an interesting bowl game. I'm not sure really what's going to happen with Jake Rudock. He did come up injured against Ohio State. I probably should be healthy by the bowl game. They got a pretty long break, so we'll see what happens there. But yeah, improved season for Michigan. They do finish as a 9-win team, and they are ranked higher than I have them in most of the polls. So yeah. So move on to number 17, Baylor, and a rough weekend for Baylor, losing another quarterback in Chris Johnson, and just kind of sucks to see. I mean, I'm kind of happy they lost because that puts Oklahoma State in the Sugar Bowl, but they have to basically use a wide receiver quarterback for the rest of the game. And, Texas obviously did beat them, and like I said, very rough way to finish the season for Baylor and the way they lost in both their games. If they had clear conditions, a healthy quarterback, who knows how they would have finished the season. Might have been a contender for the playoff, but just terrible lucky quarterback. Lost all 3 of their top 3 quarterbacks this year. But they should have either Jarrett Stidham or Chris Johnson back for the bowl game. I'm pretty sure Seth Russell is completely done for the year. So, yeah, they do play North Carolina in the bowl game, and I think with Jarrett Stidham or Chris Johnson back, it should be a very, very entertaining game. All right, so move on to number 16, Oregon. And you know what? If the season had started 4 weeks ago, Oregon would probably be a top 10 team in the country. Vernon Adams has been playing out of his mind. Oregon's been looking real good. Defense has improved. The running game's honestly been pretty solid all year. And skill positions have been looking good. Braylon Addison been one of the more underrated wide receivers in the Pac-12. Yeah, it's been a pretty good season for Oregon. After a rough start, beat USC, beat Stanford, which obviously were the 2 best teams in the Pac-12. So, like I said, I think they have what's going to be one of the most entertaining bowl games, with 2 of the more disappointing teams of the year just because of injuries, against TCU, who should have Trevon Boykin back, should be fully healthy. Trevon Boykin against a fully healthy Vernon Adams should be a very, very, very interesting high-scoring game. All right, so move on to number 15, Oklahoma State, a team that finished up the season pretty rough, losing to Oklahoma by a whole lot. I believe it was 58-23. But they do go to the Sugar Bowl against Ole Miss. We'll see what happens. It's the second year in a row that Ole Miss is going to the Sugar Bowl after getting shellacked by TCU last year. And Oklahoma State finishes up 10-2. Defied expectations, very much so. They did a lot of things differently this year that really shouldn't have worked, but did. 2-quarterback system being the main one. And, Mason Rudolph had a pretty solid year. Up and down year for sure, but you can see the confidence growing. He obviously has 2 more years left. Oklahoma State does return a lot of their players next year. They do lose Emmanuel Ogbah, though. Like I said, pretty good season all in all. They were playoff contenders at one point, and then got knocked off by Baylor, and then just demolished by OU. But nonetheless, they do finish as the second best team, but in the second best bowl game in the Big 12. So they do make a New Year's Six bowl. So after the loss to OU, that's really as good a finish as you could hope for Oklahoma State. So move on to number 14, Ole Miss. Again, another team that, I wouldn't really say they defied expectations because they finished pretty much right where they started the year ranking-wise. And it's been again another team that's had an up and down year. Obviously, they were the only team to beat Alabama this year, which was a huge win. They beat them 2 years in a row, and they do finish actually. I think it's the second. I want to say the second highest ranked team in the SEC, which after the preseason rankings is honestly kind of sad. But nonetheless, they do get a spot in the Sugar Bowl. Honestly, the team does look pretty identical to the one last year. Skill positions are strong. Defense is looking pretty strong. And, see what happens. So move on to number 13, Houston. And this is the team that I have ranked pretty much higher than everyone else just because I believe that Houston is a very good team. They beat Temple by 11, which is more than Notre Dame beat them by, and which is more than I believe, I want to say maybe? Anyway, or not Navy. That's more than, or that's less than South Florida beat them by. But like I said, very good team. They beat Memphis. They beat Navy. They beat Temple. And for me, that's 3 solid AAC teams that they beat. They had a bad loss to UConn. If they played again, I think they'd win. But all in all, champions of a very good conference. They head into a New Year's Six Bowl against Florida State, which should be an entertaining game. 2 teams that are both looking pretty good right now. So, yeah, it should be interesting. Move on to number 12, Northwestern. And, a team that I had written off early in the year when they had lost to Michigan. And I can't remember who else they lost to in the beginning of the year. But, like I said, a team that finished as the second best team in the Big Ten West, which I did not see coming. And, they head into a bowl game with Tennessee. Like I said, should be pretty entertaining. They did have one of the better defenses in the country this year. And, should see what happens next year. I don't know. There's not much to say for Northwestern. It was a really solid year. And, they beat a lot of teams a lot of people didn't think they would. They beat Penn State. They beat Wisconsin. Beat Nebraska, Dukes. They even beat Stanford to kick off the year. So, like I said, solid season for Northwestern. Move on to number 11, TCU. Oh, Northwestern, if you didn't see me early in the video, they do play Tennessee in their bowl game. So, move on to number 11, TCU. And like I said, with Oregon, should be one of the more entertaining bowl games, if not the most entertaining, when they play in the Alamo Bowl this year. So, again, another team that had a rough season when it came to injuries and looking like they're a little bit healthy now. But, they did have some big wins. They almost beat OU. They beat Baylor. They just derailed Texas. They were actually the only team in the top 4 out of the in the Big 4 out of the Big 12 that did not either come close to losing to Texas or actually lost to Texas. Texas did beat Baylor in Oklahoma. And like I said, big way to finish for TCU. If they can beat Oregon, then it's been a pretty solid season. They'll finish with a top 10 ranking, so salvaging the most they can out of just an injury-filled season. So move on to number 10, Florida State, and again, another team that kind of finishes right where they started ranking-wise. I think they've kind of found the right track with starting Sean McGuire at quarterback, and I think that Florida State's heading into next year is sitting really good. They had a lot of inexperience this year. I think they have Dalvin Cook returning, and I'm not sure Sean McGuire. I think Sean McGuire's a junior, so he should be returning. If they start him, then I think they're headed in the right direction. Should be a team that contends for the ACC title again next year. And, like I said, if they beat Houston, which I'm pretty high on, so I think that's a solid win in their New Year's Six Bowl, then it should be enough for maybe a top 8 ranking and like I said, very solid finish to the year. Really, the only thing you take back about the Florida State season is obviously the Georgia Tech loss, which was really rough. But outside from that, they played Clemson pretty close and won every other game. So, yeah, like I said, solid season for Florida State. Move on to number 9, Notre Dame. And, kind of the same story with Florida State. Notre Dame's played pretty well this year. They lost to Stanford by just this much and lost to Clemson by very little also. So I do think that Notre Dame is a top 10 team. I've been pretty high on them all year. Obviously, I don't think they should be in the playoff, I don't know if they've been in my playoff. They might have been in my playoff once or twice this year, but they're looking pretty good heading into next year if they can stay healthy, regardless if it is Deshaun Kaiser or Malik Zaire starting at quarterback next year. They've proven they have a ton of depth. They can deal with injury, and now they've pretty much got experience all over the place. I'm not really sure if Will Fuller's returning for another year. I think they do lose Taron Folston, but I think they return CJ Prosise, and I really think Prosise is a better running back than Taron Folston anyway. All right, so move on to number 8, Iowa. Rough way to finish this season, at least the regular season. Great season for Iowa. I won't lie, I was pretty low on Iowa the entire season. I really didn't have them picked to lose too many games, but I won't lie, it was one of those teams that I really didn't want to see in the playoff. They were a very solid team until Michigan State won that game. I would pretty much control every game since, I want to say, maybe the Wisconsin game. So, like I said, good season for Iowa. Defense played great. Not sure how many years C.J. Beathard has left, or Jordan Canzeri. But like I said, I think they found something special this year, regardless, even though they didn't win the Big Ten. They did make it to a New Year's Six Bowl, and I don't remember who they're playing. Hopefully they can rep the Big Ten well. Like I said, the Big Ten might be the best conference in college football this year. I believe they have the most ranked teams in the top 25. So they do play Stanford in their bowl game, which, like I said, should be a really interesting game. Two teams that are actually kind of similar. Solid quarterback play, not great, but solid enough. Two quarterbacks that don't make a whole lot of mistakes, that have had inconsistent careers. Two teams that both have very solid running backs, pretty solid defenses. So like I said, should be one of the better bowl games to watch. So move on to number 7, North Carolina. Now, I know that a lot of people are going to have North Carolina ranked around the 10th spot. I think they actually moved up my ranking. I don't remember if they moved up my rankings or not, but I think North Carolina got hoed last week. They should have had the onside kick. They made a few mistakes they shouldn't have, and I know shoulda, coulda, woulda, but second game that the state of North Carolina really has kind of gotten fucked over by refs. Duke lost to Miami, and North Carolina there. Obviously, it's not a reviewable play, but nonetheless, one of the best seasons North Carolina's had in a long time. So, great season. Should be one of the favorites for the Coastal Division again next year. I don't see why they wouldn't be. And like I said, they head into a bowl game with Baylor, so definitely not an easy bowl game with Baylor getting healthy, but should be able to test North Carolina again. And I think they're up for the test, and they obviously showed that against Clemson. So move on to number 6, Stanford. Highest ranked 2-loss team in the country. I think it is kind of well deserved. You watch them play at the end of the year, they do look like one of the best teams in the country. Christian McCaffrey is definitely one of the best running backs in the country. He played great all year. Was a workhorse for Stanford. Had at least 25 or 30 carries, it seemed, every game. And it seemed like every other game you looked at in the box score, he had like 200-300 yards. Definitely should be in New York for the Heisman presentation. Not sure if he should win, but like I said, definitely one of the most valuable players to any team this year. They do come out with Pac-12 championship. I say if they don't lose to Northwestern, then they should be in the playoff. But you know what? You lose to Northwestern, and you should be out. Like I said, great season for Stanford. I did have them in my college football playoff at the beginning of the year. It's one of the low-key teams that I thought would be really good. I had 4 low-key predictions of who I thought could sneak into the playoff. And 2 of them were good predictions, 2 of them not so much. I believe those teams were Wisconsin, Navy, Arizona, and then Stanford. And 2 of those teams were pretty good. One of the teams kind of finished where they started, and then one just kind of fell apart completely. So, like I said, good season for Stanford. Pac-12 championship, I believe that's like 3 championships in like the last 5 years for them. So, like I said, big year. Good way to. I think this is Kevin Hogan's last year, so a good way to finish that out. And should be a very interesting bowl game against Iowa. So move on to number 5, Ohio State, and a team that I really would like to see in the playoff. Obviously they shouldn't make it, just resume-wise. But just seeing the way they finished the year, it seems kind of like you're getting Ohio State blue balls by not seeing them in the playoff, that they kind of put it together. You feel like they are one of the more talented teams in the country. It kind of feels like TCU last year, where whoever Ohio State plays in their bowl game, which I believe is Notre Dame, which, again, should be a very entertaining bowl game. Two of the most traditional powers in the country, two of the biggest fan bases in the country, and should be one of the better New Year's Six bowls. I believe it is the Rose Bowl, I want to say. But like I said, should be a great bowl game. Nonetheless, obviously not a terrible season for Ohio State. They can probably notch a top 4 ranking if they win their game, maybe even a top 3. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, should have a lot more hype heading into next year again. So move on to number 4, Michigan State. And you know what? Big win against Iowa. Knocks them into the playoff. A lot of people are going to say Michigan State has the resume to be over OU. But I think OU's really looked more impressive this year. They both have kind of similar losses, like actually almost identical losses. Both teams lost to 5-win teams. And, Oklahoma, after that Texas game, I think has looked like the best team in the country. They just, they beat Baylor in Waco when Baylor was pretty much fully healthy, honestly. They survived TCU, which honestly, I think they would have won by a lot if Baker Mayfield had stayed in the game. And just everything kind of clicked at the end against Oklahoma State and just demolished Oklahoma State, who's actually ranking-wise second best team in the Big 12, even if they don't look like it. And yeah, like I said, Oklahoma, great finish to the year. Anyway, regress back to Michigan State. Sorry, I got sidetracked there. So yeah, Michigan State, good year, obviously in the college football playoff. They do play Alabama in the first round. They are ranked number 3 in the playoff rankings. But these are my rankings. This is how I think rankings should have or how they should have ranked finishing out the year. This is my eye test. So, yeah, like I said, good year for Michigan State. Obviously, a couple of huge wins, beating Iowa, Oregon. Sorry, I'm drawing a blank here. Michigan and Ohio State, and those are 2 top 15 or 4. I want to say top 15 teams. Yeah, so very deservedly so in the playoff. See what happens with Connor Cook. L.J. Scott played great, and they've been doing what they had to do to win. So we'll see what happens against Alabama. All right, so move on to Oklahoma, and really all I want to say left on them is, while they are looking like one of the favorites this year, they are very much looking like Ohio State from last year. Bringing a new quarterback, obviously not the same situation with the 3 quarterbacks from last year, but brought in a new quarterback this year in Baker Mayfield, lost to a team like Ohio State last year to Virginia Tech, and they do play Clemson in their first-round game, which I believe will be a very, very entertaining game. Obviously, a rematch of the bowl game from last year where OU kind of just got derailed, but we'll see what happens. Should be an incredibly entertaining game with what I believe is two of the better quarterbacks in the country, if not 2 of the best. I personally think Deshaun Watson is the most well-rounded quarterback in the country. A lot of people think that too. But yeah. Anyway, move on to number 2, Alabama. Resume-wise, it doesn't look great just because they lost to Ole Miss, and some of the teams they beat, who were at the time top 25 teams, are not now. But nonetheless, they beat a couple of good teams outside of the SEC. They beat Wisconsin by, I believe, more than any other Big Ten team did. So, yeah, Wisconsin, like I said, back in the top 25. I'm not one of those that's going to say Alabama shouldn't be in the playoff. I know Colin Cowherd said that last week. There's just no way that happens. They do have probably the best running back in the country, just an absolutely dominant defense right now. And like I said, it should be an interesting matchup with Michigan State, 2 pretty similar teams. And yeah, not too much to say about Bama. Move on to number 1, Clemson, and the only undefeated team left in college football this year. So, like I said, I voiced my opinion about the North Carolina game, but Clemson was a better team that game. And yeah, they have one of the better defenses in the country. Hasn't been great of late, but I think they can rebound against OU. One of the most confident and best quarterbacks in the country, if not the best, like I said. I think it's really between him and Derrick Henry for Heisman, and I have no clue who it's going to be. Alabama running backs tend to be popular choices. Obviously, most recently, Trent Richardson. And then, obviously, Eddie Lacy had a chance at it. But, like I said, or not Trent Richardson. Trent Richardson had a shot at it, too. Mark Ingram. Sorry about that. But, like I said, Alabama, good team. Clemson should be an entertaining bowl game. They do notch the #1 seed, but they do play OU as the 4 seed. And like I said, should be an incredibly entertaining college football playoff, one that I'm very much looking forward to. Last year's I wasn't as excited about just because I really didn't like any of the 4 teams in the college football playoff. I won't lie, but that was just a personal thing. I didn't think it was going to be very exciting to watch. And you know what? I think this is going to be a really, really, really good second year of the college football playoff. So yeah, that concludes my by far longest ranking video of the year. I should come back with the my bowl prediction video probably tomorrow. I might want to do it tonight just so I can get it out there. But like I said, that concludes my second to final rankings of the 2015 season. So yeah, like I said, it's been a fun season. Should be an extremely fun bowl season. I'm very much looking forward to it. And the Army-Navy game this weekend. So yeah, that's pretty much it. See ya.